My talk is intended for the 4th year English specialization student of University of Distance Education. My talk is to focus on Eng-4103 English Language Studies 5. My topic is Non-Canonical Complements and Subjects. Non-canonical complements and subjects, head complement structures and subject-predicate structures play a major role in languages, obviously. However, there are other important kinds of structure. Particularly important are sentences involving what we can call a non-canonical complement or a non-canonical subject. Now we will introduce the range of sentence types that fall into these two broad categories and consider, in general terms, how they might be analyzed. At one time, such sentences were almost universally seen as providing evidence for a transformational approach to grammar. However, this position is a controversial one. We will begin by looking at a range of sentences involving non-canonical complements, and then we will look at a variety of sentences involving non-canonical subjects. Next, we will illustrate the important point that many sentences involving a non-canonical complement or a non-canonical subject have related sentences with a canonical complement or subject. Then we will look at what we can call the monostructural approach to these sentences, which is exemplified by PSG. Finally, we will consider that we can call the multi-structural approach, which is exemplified by transformational grammar. Non-canonical complements first. Then we can look at sentences involving non-canonical complements. By a non-canonical complement, I mean a constituent which functions as a complement of a word label head, that is, satisfies its subcategorization requirements, but is not a sister of the head as complements normally are. Various kinds of sentences can involve non-canonical complements. We can look first at WH questions. By a WH question, I mean an interrogated involving a question word or a WH word of some kind like who, what, or how, and requiring a more specific answer than just yes or no. The following is a typical example. 1. Who did Hobbs unwind? Very similar is a bracketed subordinate clause in the following example. 2. I wonder who Hobbs unwind? In both these examples, there is no NP complement following unwind. This is normally necessary as 3 illustrates. 3. Hobbs unwind. The obvious explanation for the absence of the NP complement in 1 and 2 is that the WH word function acts a complement. Some support for this view comes from the fact that N and B complement cannot be added to examples like 1 and 2 as the following illustrate. 4. Who did Hobbs unwind her? 5. I wonder who Hobbs unwind her. If the WH word functions as a complement of unwind in 1 and 2, then 4 and 5 will be ungrammatical for the same reason as the following. 6. Hobbs unwind her him. In all 3 cases, the problem is that a particular subcategorizing requirement is satisfied twice. Another type of sentence that can involve non-canonical complements is a backstep. We can look here at the following. 7. Rhodes was unwind. Again, we have the verb unwind without a following NP complement. The obvious explanation for the absence of the complement is that the subject Rhodes function as a complement. The fact that we cannot add a complement provides some support for this view. 8. Rhodes was unwind Hobbs. If Rhodes function as a complement in 7, it will be ungrammatical, just like 4 and 5, because a subcategorization requirement is doubly satisfied. Non-canonical subjects. We can turn now to non-canonical subjects. By a non-canonical subject, I mean a constituent which functions as the subject of a predicate, although it is not a sister of the predicate. Again, various kinds of sentences are relevant, and again we can begin by looking at my WH questions. Relevant examples are 9 and the bracketed subordinate clauses in 10. 9. Who do you think annoyed Rhodes? 10. I wonder who you think annoyed Rhodes. In both these examples, the predicate annoyed Rhodes is not immediately preceded by a subject. This is normally necessary, as 11 illustrates. 11. You think annoyed Rhodes. The obvious explanation for the absence of the subject in 9 and 10 is that the WH word functions as the subject. The ungrammaticality of the following provides some support for this view. 12. Who do you think he annoyed Rhodes? 13. I wonder who you think he annoyed Rhodes. If the WH word functions as the subject of annoyed Rhodes in 9 and 10, 12 and 13 will be ungrammatical for the same reason as the following. 14. He, she annoyed Rhodes. In all three cases, we have predicate with two subjects. Another type of sentence that is relevant here is what is known as raising sentence. We can illustrate with the following. 15. Hobbs seemed to be a fool. Here, the predicate to be a fool is not immediately preceded by a subject. This is normally necessary, as the following contrast illustrates. 16a. They consider Rhodes to be a fool. B. They consider to be a fool. The obvious explanation for the absence of the subject in 15 is that Hobbs, the subject of seemed to be a fool, also functions as subject of to be a fool. This view receives some support from the ungrammaticality of the following. 17. Hobbs seemed Rhodes to be a fool. If Hobbs functions as the subject of to be a fool. 17 will be another case of a predicate with two subjects. Passive are also relevant here. Consider, for example, the following. 18. Rhodes is considered to be a fool. This is a lot like 15. Hobbs seemed to be a fool. The obvious explanation for the absence of the subject of to be a fool is that Rhodes, the subject of the larger predicate, is considered to be a fool, also function as subject of the predicate. The ungrammaticality of the following supports this view. 19. Rhodes is considered Hobbs to be a fool. This can be seen as another example of a predicate with two subjects. There is one further point to note about examples like 18. For PSG, Rhodes in 16a is not just a subject of the following predicate, but also a complement of the preceding verb. Hence, for PSG, Rhodes in 18 is both a non-canonical subject and non-canonical complement. Related sentences. One important point to note about sentences of the kind that we are concerned with here is that in many cases, there are related sentences involving canonical complements or canonical subjects. Related to 1, who take Hobbs annoy, and the subordinate clause in 2, we have the following. 20. Hobbs annoyed who? 21. Hobbs annoyed someone. 20 is what is known as an echo question. A question which echoes someone's statement. 21 might be called an indefinite statement. Related to 7, Rhodes was annoyed is the following indefinite statement. 22. Someone annoyed Rhodes. Related to 9 and the subordinate clause in 10, we have the following. 23. You think who anointed Rhodes? 24. You think someone anointed Rhodes. Related to 15. Hobbs seemed to be a fool, we have the following. 25. It seemed that Hobbs was a fool. Finally, related to 18. Rhodes is considered to be a fool, we have the following. 26. Someone considered Rhodes to be a fool. Thus, all the examples we have considered so far have a related sentence with a canonical complement or a canonical subject. It is important to note, however, that this is not always the case. We can look first at 27 and the bracketed subordinate clause in 28. 27. Who the hell did Hobbs anoint? 28. I wonder who the hell Hobbs anoint. Neither of the following is possible. 29. Hobbs anoint who the hell. 30. Hobbs anoint someone the hell. Here, then, there seems to be no related sentences with a canonical complement. The situation is similar with the following. 31. Hobbs is rumored to be a spy. Here, the following is ungrammatical. 32. They rumor Hobbs to be a spy. Here, then, there seems to be no related sentence with a canonical subject. Finally, we can consider the following. 33. Hobbs tends to anoint Rhodes. Here, the following is ungrammatical. 34. It tends that Hobbs anoints Rhodes. Again then, there seems to be no related sentence with a canonical subject. The monostructural approach. How can we handle non-canonical complement and subjects? We can distinguish two approaches, which we can call the monostructural approach and the multistructural approach. For the former, the syntactic structure of a sentence is always a single tree, whereas for the latter, it can be a number of trees. We can look first at the former. If the structure of a sentence is a single tree, the only way to handle sentences involving non-canonical complements and subjects is to somehow make what label heads and predicates sensitive to the presence of certain categories higher in the tree. We can illustrate this with the various examples we have considered. We can look first at the subordinate clause in 2. I wonder who Hobbs anointed. This will have something like the following structure. If this is the only structure that this clause has, the verb anoint will somehow have to be sensitive to the presence of who higher up the tree. The situation is similar with 7. Rhodes was anointed. Here we will have something like the following structure in 36. If this is the only structure that this example has, the verb anoint must somehow be sensitive to the presence of Rhodes higher up the tree. We can turn now to the subordinate clause in 10. I wonder who you think anointed Rhodes. Here we will have something like the following structure. If this is the only structure that this clause has, the predicate anoint Rhodes must somehow be sensitive to the presence of who higher up the tree. Finally, we can consider 15. Hobbs seemed to be a fool. This will have something like the following structure, 38. If this is the only structure it has, the predicate to be a fool must somehow be sensitive to the presence of Hobbs higher up the tree. Thus, if we adopt a monostructural approach, either a word label, head or a predicate must somehow be sensitive to a constituent higher in the tree, as we will. This is essentially the approach that is taken within PSG. We can turn now to the multi-structure approach if the syntactic structure of a sentence can involve more than one tree. There is no need to make word label heads and predicates sensitive to a constituent higher up the tree. Instead, we can associate the sentence with an additional abstract structure in which the non-canonical complement or subject is in the canonical position for the complement or a subject. We can look first at the subordinate clause in 2. Here, in addition to the ordinary structure in 35, who, Hobbs, and White, we can have the following abstract structure in which who is in the canonical complement position. We can treat 7, Rhodes, was, and White in much the same way. Here, in addition to the ordinary structure in 36, we can have the following abstract structure with Rhodes in the canonical complement position. Notice that this structure involves an empty subject position symbolized as E. Next, we can consider the subordinate clause in 10. Here, in addition to the ordinary structure in 37, who you think annoyed Rhodes, we can have the following abstract structure in which who is in the canonical subject position. Finally, we can look at 15. Hobbs seemed to be a fool. Here, in addition to the ordinary structure in 38, we can have the following abstract structures in which Hobbs is in the canonical subject position. Again, we have an empty subject position here. This is essentially the approach that is taken within transformational grammar. In transformational grammar, the additional abstract structures are regarded as more basic, and the ordinary structures are seen as derived from them by various movement processes. This substitutes the moved category for an existing empty category. The empty category is commonly referred to as a landing site for the movement. Substitution processes are commonly known as structure-preserving items introduced in Emmons 1970. Since, unlike adjunction processes, they do not change the structure of the sentence in any way but just recognize the words. Now, I will end my talk here. I hope you will understand how to study non-canonical complements and subject. Good luck for your exam.